The evening air carried the quiet weight of early autumn. It moved gently through the narrow streets, brushing against the faded porches and rattling loose shutters. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a soft purple glow that clung to the sky like a memory that wasn't ready to leave. Daniel Harper stood on the small wooden steps of his house and looked at the "For Sale" sign planted in his dry front yard. The sign leaned slightly to the left. He had meant to straighten it that morning, but somehow he never did. The house behind him was old. The paint had peeled in thin, tired curls. The porch rail wobbled if you leaned too hard. The mailbox had a dent that never quite popped back into shape, but it was still his home. It carried the smell of old coffee and laundry soap. It held the quiet echo of laughter from years that felt both close and very far away. Daniel placed his hands in his jacket pockets and felt the crisp edge of a folded bill. $20, that was all he had left in his wallet. He exhaled slowly. Most people in town believed Daniel was just another struggling single father trying to keep his head above water. That part was true. He did struggle. Bills had stacked up like unopened letters of bad news. His hours at work had been cut. Repairs on the house had drained what little savings he had left. But there was another layer to his life that no one knew about. Daniel wasn't just a struggling dad. He was undercover. For the past year, he had been working quietly with a federal investigation team, helping uncover a real estate fraud operation that had swallowed entire neighborhoods in nearby cities. Slumlords, fake buyers, silent partnerships, millions of dollars moved like shadows through paperwork. Daniel had once been part of that world. Years ago, he had worked in high-end property investments. He had worn tailored suits and carried polished briefcases. But when he discovered the corruption inside his own company, he had chosen to speak up. The fallout had been brutal. His reputation had been damaged. His income disappeared. Friends distanced themselves. And in the quiet aftermath, he was left with this small house, his daughter Emma, and a life that looked very different from the one he once imagined. Emma was asleep inside now, 8 years old, soft brown curls, a habit of humming when she read. She believed her father could fix anything. Daniel wasn't sure that was still true. A sudden gust of wind stirred fallen leaves across the sidewalk. And that was when he saw her. A woman stood near the edge of his yard, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her long coat was thin and worn. One hand rested gently on her rounded stomach. She was pregnant. Her hair was pulled back loosely, and her face carried the pale exhaustion of someone who had walked too far with nowhere certain to go. Daniel stepped down from the porch. "Evening," he said gently. She looked startled at first, then embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to bother you. I just needed to sit for a minute. There was a bus stop a few feet down the street." "But no bus would come this late. You okay?" Daniel asked. She hesitated. "My name's Sarah," she said quietly. "I was supposed to stay with my sister tonight, but she moved, didn't tell me where." Her voice didn't break, but it felt like it wanted to. Daniel glanced down the street. It was empty. "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" She shook her head once. There was a long pause, the kind that feels heavier than it looks. Daniel reached into his pocket and felt the folded bill again. $20. It was meant for groceries tomorrow. Milk, bread, maybe eggs if they were still on sale. He thought of Emma's lunchbox. He thought of the foreclosure letter sitting unopened on the kitchen table. Then he looked at Sarah. Her shoes were worn thin at the soles. Her coat did little to protect her from the growing chill. And despite everything, she stood straight, not asking, not begging, just tired. Daniel pulled the bill from his pocket and held it out. "It's not much." He said softly, "But it'll get you a motel room for the night. There's one 2 blocks over." Her eyes widened. "I can't take that." "You can," he replied. "It's okay." She studied his face, as if searching for a hidden cost behind his kindness. "There's no catch?" she asked carefully. "No catch." She accepted the money slowly, her fingers brushing his. They were cold. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what this means." Daniel gave a small nod. "Take care of yourself." She turned and began walking toward the corner, her steps slow but steady. Daniel stood there until she disappeared from view. The house behind him felt quieter somehow. That night, he made Emma grilled cheese sandwiches with the last slices of bread. He told her everything would be fine. He kissed her forehead. He sat at the kitchen table long after she fell asleep. The foreclosure letter remained unopened. He already knew what it said. The next morning arrived with pale sunlight spilling through the thin curtains. Daniel woke early, before Emma, and stepped outside to collect the newspaper. A sleek black car was parked in front of his house. It did not belong in this neighborhood. Daniel froze. The engine was off. The windows were tinted. After a moment, the rear door opened, and Sarah stepped out, but she did not look the same. Her coat was different, tailored, clean. Her hair was neatly styled. Her posture carried quiet confidence. Behind her, a sharply dressed man exited the driver's seat and stood respectfully by the car. Daniel blinked. She walked toward him with calm, measured steps. "Good morning, Daniel." He stared. "What's going on?" She smiled gently. "My full name is Sarah Whitmore." The name struck him like distant thunder. Whitmore Developments, one of the largest real estate firms in the region. Ethical, transparent, known for restoring struggling neighborhoods rather than exploiting them. He had heard of them often during the investigation. He began, but the words didn't settle. She nodded. "Yes." The man beside the car handed her a folder. "I wasn't stranded last night," she said softly. "At least, not in the way you thought." Daniel felt confusion rise in his chest. "I don't understand." "I'm part of a community initiative," she explained. "We've been quietly observing neighborhoods affected by fraudulent property schemes, families on the brink of losing their homes, people who were hurt by companies like the one you exposed." Daniel's throat tightened. "You knew about that." She smiled faintly. "We know who you are and what you did." He felt suddenly exposed. Not ashamed, just seen. Last night wasn't staged. She continued. "I was out reviewing properties personally. I do that often. The pregnancy is real. The exhaustion is real. But I didn't expect someone in your position to give up his last $20. Daniel said nothing. "I checked your listing this morning," she added, "and I'd like to make an offer." He glanced at the crooked "For Sale" sign. "You're buying the house?" "Yes." The word hung in the air. "But I can't just leave," he said quickly. "My daughter—" "You won't have to." She opened the folder and handed him a document. "We're purchasing the property above market value, enough to cover your debts, and if you're willing, we'd like to hire you." Daniel stared at the paper. "Hire me? We need someone who understands both sides of this industry, someone who has lived through its worst parts and still chose integrity. Our team could use that." The world felt strangely still. "And the house?" he asked quietly. "You and Emma can stay." She said, "Rent, free for the next 2 years while you transition. After that, you'll have the option to buy it back at a reduced rate." Daniel's eyes blurred slightly. "You don't owe me this," he whispered. Sarah looked at him steadily. "You gave without knowing who I was," she replied. "That tells me everything I need to know." A small voice called from inside the house, "Dad." Emma stood at the doorway, her curls messy from sleep. Daniel turned. "It's okay, sweetheart." he said gently. Sarah's expression softened when she saw the little girl. "This is Emma," Daniel said. "Hi, Emma." Sarah smiled. Emma waved shyly. Daniel looked back at Sarah, at the car, at the folder in his hands. He felt something shift inside him, not relief exactly, something deeper, hope. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "Say yes," Sarah replied kindly. He took a long breath. "Yes." The word felt steady, sure, right. The man by the car stepped forward to finalize the paperwork. Daniel signed his name with careful strokes. Each letter felt like a closing chapter and the beginning of something new. As the documents were completed, Sarah lingered by the porch. "I meant what I said," she told him quietly. "Last night I was tired and worried. Sometimes I wonder what kind of world my child will grow up in." She placed a hand over her stomach. "Now I feel a little more certain." Daniel looked at the rising sun casting warm light over the neighborhood. "It's not perfect," he said, "but there's still good here." She nodded. "Yes, there is." The black car eventually pulled away. The street returned to its usual stillness. Daniel stood in his yard with Emma beside him. "Dad," she asked softly, "are we going to be okay?" He knelt down and met her eyes. "Yes," he said, and this time he knew it was true. "We are." The crooked for sale sign still leaned in the yard, but it no longer felt like a symbol of loss. It felt like a reminder. Sometimes the smallest act, $20 folded quietly in a tired hand, can ripple farther than we ever expect. Inside the house, the morning light filled the kitchen. Daniel picked up the foreclosure letter from the table. He opened it, then he folded it carefully and placed it in the trash. Outside, leaves drifted gently across the yard. And for the first time in a long while, the house did not feel like something he was about to lose. It felt like home again,